The whistle of a train pierces the night, echoing across empty fields. Rural America hides more than barns and cornfields. It hides forgotten train stops, places where time slowed and then stopped entirely. By day, these stations look abandoned. Wooden platforms crumble. Signs swing in the wind. Benches collect dust and leaves. By night, they are alive. Travelers report seeing figures waiting on platforms long after the last train passed. Some hear footsteps pacing on the tracks. Others hear whispers calling their names, carried by the wind along the rails. Some say the stations remember the people who vanished here. Others say the trains themselves brought something that refused to leave. Tonight, we explore 20 haunted forgotten train stops in rural America. Where echoes of the past linger, shadows watch silently, and the night carries the screams of travelers who never reached their destinations. If you saw a figure waiting on the platform, unmoving, staring into your eyes as your car crossed the tracks, would you approach, or would you drive away before the darkness notices you? Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are somewhere safe tonight, because the places we are about to visit are not for the faint of heart. Train stops were once the heart of rural America. They welcomed travelers, merchants, and families. But some stops became something else entirely. Forgotten by the world, they became stages for strange disappearances, unexplained noises, and shadowed figures that linger long after the rails have rusted. Visitors report sudden chills, cold drafts moving across empty platforms, and footsteps that echo in empty halls. Doors swing open though no one is inside. Lights flicker, sometimes revealing faces that vanish the instant they are seen. Some travelers return terrified. Some vanish completely. And some carry the shadows of the stops with them, long after they leave. Before we step onto our first platform, let me ask you this. If the train you were waiting for never arrived, but someone, or something, watched you from the darkness, would you stay to see it, or leave before it calls your name? Take a deep breath, and let us journey into the most haunted forgotten train stops in rural America. Blackwood Platform sits quietly at the edge of a forgotten railway line. The wooden boards of the station creak beneath each step, their surfaces warped and weathered by years of neglect. The roof sags slightly, and rusted metal fixtures glint faintly in the dim light. The air carries a heavy stillness, punctuated only by distant sounds of wind brushing through trees or the faint rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. Travelers report seeing figures lingering in the shadows of the platform. They stand silently, motionless, their shapes human yet indistinct. At first, they seem at the edge of perception. And when approached, they vanish, leaving only the sense of presence behind. The figures appear in different locations at different times, as if shifting through space with the platform itself. The tracks beyond the station are long abandoned. Rust coats the rails, weeds push through the ties, and the ballast is scattered and uneven. Yet, despite the emptiness, visitors hear the unmistakable sound of an approaching train. The wheels rumble, the brakes hiss, and the whistle calls out across the clearing. The sound rises and falls, echoing against distant hills. Yet no train is visible. Passengers tense as the vibrations move through the platform beneath their feet, feeling the arrival in body and mind, though nothing exists to explain it. The platform itself reacts subtly to those who linger. Wooden boards shift underfoot with a faint creak, shadows stretch and bend in impossible directions, and the air seems heavier near the edges where the figures appear. Some report a low vibration in the floor, almost imperceptible at first, then growing with attention or proximity to the shadowed corners. The sensation is subtle, yet unmistakable, as though the station itself is aware. Wind carries strange echoes. Sounds that might otherwise be dismissed: the click of a lantern, the distant clatter of wheels, the faint rustling of clothing take on presence in the empty space. The figures in the shadows seem attuned to movement, their attention implied even when unseen. Travelers instinctively slow, their senses heightened by the combination of sound, light, and uncertainty. Time within Blackwood platform behaves oddly. A few moments spent exploring may feel like an hour, while an extended stay can seem to compress into a brief interval. Footsteps are echoed with delay, and sounds of approaching trains can repeat several times, fading in and out unpredictably. Shadows shift in ways that suggest independent motion, producing an immersive, disorienting experience that heightens perception of presence. The figures are rarely fully visible. Sometimes a hat, a coat, or a faint outline of a person appears at the edge of a lantern's glow or in the reflective surface of wet boards after rainfall. At other times, they appear only as distortions of light and shadow, leaving the mind to fill in form and intent. Their stillness is deliberate, their gaze suggested, yet unconfirmable. Visitors often notice subtle changes in the environment. Objects left on the platform may shift slightly between visits. Small stones or boards appear displaced, and weeds along the edges sometimes bend or flatten as if touched by unseen hands. As if touched by unseen hands. Even the sound of approaching trains varies in pitch and direction, adding to the sense that the platform is not entirely passive, but responds to those who enter. The sensation of anticipation builds as one waits for the phantom train. The sound begins distant, soft at first, growing steadily in volume. The whistle calls once, twice, then fades, yet the tracks remain empty. Vibrations pass through the platform boards, in rhythm with the imagined wheels, creating an immersive sensory experience. That lingers long after the sounds vanish. The surrounding landscape reinforces isolation. Trees encroach on the platform, casting long shadows that shift with moonlight or lantern glow. Hills absorb sound in unusual ways, enhancing the echo and resonance of phantom trains, footsteps, and whispered presences. The platform feels suspended, a threshold between the ordinary world and a space that exists in parallel, shaped by memory, perception, and absence. Attempts to document the phenomena yield limited results. Photographs capture blurred shapes, indistinct shadows, and reflections of light where nothing is present. Audio recordings pick up static, faint rumbling, or the distant hiss of brakes without a source. Equipment often fails or produces anomalies that reinforce the perception of a location resistant to explanation, preserving experience over proof. Visitors leave Blackwood platform with a lasting impression. The figures in shadows, the sound of phantom trains, and the subtle shifts in environment create a memory that persists long after departure. The sense of being observed, of standing in a space alive with echoes and presence, endures. Blackwood platform remains, isolated, overgrown, and silent to the casual observer. Yet alive to those who enter. Its wooden boards creak, shadows move independently. And the rails carry the sound of trains that never arrive. The station endures as a place where perception, memory, and the unseen converge. Leaving travelers with the impression of presence, anticipation, and enduring mystery. Whispering Pine Station sits at the edge of a dense forest, the platform barely visible beneath towering pines. Their trunks rise like dark sentinels, and their branches sway subtly even when the air is still. The movement is almost imperceptible at first, a gentle motion that seems out of sync with natural wind. Travelers approaching the station often notice it immediately, a sense that the trees themselves are aware of their presence. The forest is filled with sound, or at least what seems like sound. Whispers drift through the trees, faint at first, then growing in volume as visitors step closer to the platform. The voices are indistinct, echoing among trunks and branches, carrying words that cannot be understood. They seem to come from all directions, surrounding the listener in a soft, unsettling murmur. The whispers rise and fall, responding subtly to movement and attention, producing a persistent awareness of being observed. Fog often hangs low across the platform, pooling between rails and creeping along the forest floor. Shapes appear within the mist, vaguely human in form, standing or moving slowly among the trees. Figures remain silent, emerging briefly before vanishing as if melting into the fog itself. Drivers or passengers arriving in vehicles often see them in headlights, only for the shapes to disappear completely by the time they approach. The experience is fleeting but profoundly affecting, leaving an impression of attention and presence that lingers long after the figures vanish. The platform itself seems altered at night. Shadows shift unnaturally across the wooden boards, stretching along rails and benches. Light from lanterns or headlights interacts with fog and trees, creating patterns that appear to move independently. Visitors report that even the sound of their footsteps changes, echoing in some areas and muted in others, producing disorientation and heightened attention. Whispering Pine Station is immersive in both sight and sound. The trees sway subtly, even in still air, exaggerating the effect of the fog and shadows. Figures appear with near imperceptible timing, always in the peripheral vision, vanishing when confronted directly. Whispers seem to respond to presence, growing louder when a visitor pauses, then fading when movement resumes. The combined effect produces a continuous, unnerving awareness that the station and surrounding forest are watching and responding. Travelers report physical sensations that accompany perception. A subtle chill runs along the spine, skin prickles on the arms, and hair stands on end. The sensation of being followed or observed intensifies as fog and shadow obscure familiar points of reference. Peripheral vision detects motion that disappears when looked at directly. The environment manipulates awareness without direct contact, producing tension and sustained attention in every movement. Time feels altered within the station. Moments stretch or compress unpredictably. A brief pause at the edge of the platform may feel like minutes. While movement along the rails can produce a sense of accelerated progression. The fog, shadows, and whispers combine to create temporal distortion, leaving explorers uncertain of how long they have remained within the area. Sound is layered and unpredictable. Whispers are interwoven with the rustle of branches and the creak of platform boards. Occasionally, faint steps echo in spaces where no one stands. The whispers respond subtly to movement and attention, rising and fading in patterns that feel deliberate yet inexplicable. Figures in fog appear coincidentally with sound cues, enhancing the sense that the environment is responsive to human presence. Peripheral vision plays a central role in the experience. Shapes in fog or shadow appear to shift when attention is diverted. Trees and branches produce forms that resemble observers, moving with the viewer without overt action. Figures that emerge in fog stand motionless, yet produce a sense of active awareness. Confrontation with these shapes causes them to vanish instantly, leaving the visitor uncertain whether they have imagined the phenomenon or witnessed it. The fog and shadows interact with natural light in complex ways. Lantern beams refract off mist and wet surfaces, producing patterns that appear alive. Reflections in puddles distort shapes and movement, giving the impression that figures exist beyond physical space. The combination of light, shadow, and fog produces an immersive environment where ordinary perception is unreliable and heightened attention is required. Explorers describe the station as alive in effect, though not hostile. The figures do not advance, and the whispers produce no threat beyond discomfort and tension. The movement of trees and the presence of fog combine with auditory phenomena to create an immersive psychological environment that influences perception, focus, and awareness. Attempts to document the phenomena often fail to capture the experience fully. Cameras may record fog, shadows, and trees, but not the figures or whispers. Audio equipment captures ambient sounds but rarely the subtle murmurs or layered echoes reported by visitors. The subjective intensity remains beyond measurable capture, preserving the mystery for those present. Exiting Whispering Pines Station produces lingering effects. Visitors carry memory of the swaying trees, the shifting shadows, the whispers, and the ephemeral figures. Awareness of movement, sound, and observation remains heightened beyond the physical location. The platform and surrounding forest leave a lasting impression of space, attention, and subtle presence. Whispering Pines Station endures as a space where trees, fog, and shadow converge with perception. Figures appear in mist and vanish instantly. Whispers drift through branches and respond to attention. The station manipulates perception, disorients, and maintains an atmosphere of observation without threat. Travelers leave altered, aware that the platform and forest are alive in subtle, persistent ways, leaving a memory that lingers long after departure. Hollow Creek stop sits at the edge of a quiet, winding rail line, where a narrow bridge spans the blackened waters of the creek below. By day, the stop appears ordinary, a simple platform, weathered benches, and steel tracks stretching into the distance. Vehicles and pedestrians pass without notice, the bridge creaking only under weight, and the rails carrying trains with steady rhythm. Travelers expect routine, predictability, and safety. At night, everything changes. The bridge creaks and groans as though responding to some unseen force. Footsteps echo across the wooden planks, yet no one stands there. Each creak carries weight and presence, deliberate, synchronized with movement along the platform and tracks. Travelers approaching the bridge feel an awareness, as if the structure itself monitors every step. They are often indistinct at first, shadows among shadows, but they maintain pace with the rails. They move with intent, walking, stopping, and turning as though observing every traveler. Sometimes they vanish entirely when approached, only to reappear moments later at the far end of the platform. The shapes are humanoid but unnatural in motion, fluid and impossible to track completely. Passengers report glimpsing figures entering cars, silent and unseen. Seats shift slightly, doors remain undisturbed, yet the sensation of company is unmistakable. A sense of being measured or observed settles over travelers, subtle yet persistent, growing with every passing minute on the platform or inside the cars. Voices rise along the rails. Names are called, familiar yet unplaceable, whispered or clear depending on proximity. Travelers recognize the tones, the cadence, and the familiarity of the syllables, though no one is visible. The effect is disorienting, producing both comfort and unease, as if the stop remembers people, calling to them across time and distance. Shadows and sound interact. Light from lamps and train headlights catches shapes briefly, only for them to vanish when examined directly. Footsteps echo out of sync with movement, overlapping in layers that make direction and origin impossible to determine. Whispers travel along the rails, merging with echoes, creating a chorus that surrounds travelers on all sides. Temperature shifts unpredictably. Cold patches press against arms and shoulders, moving with the observers. The air grows thick in some areas, yet remains light in others. Explorers feel the contrast, the chill brushing along skin even when doors are closed. The sensation is neither threatening nor subtle, pressing the perception that the stop itself reacts to presence. Time becomes unreliable at Hollow Creek. Minutes stretch or collapse unpredictably. Passengers feel as if they have been on the platform far longer than the clock measures. Light flickers, shadows shift, and echoes layer, creating an environment where normal perception of duration and distance is warped. Attempts to document the phenomena yield mixed results. Cameras capture tracks, platform, and bridge, yet the pacing figures rarely appear. Audio devices register echoes, faint murmurs, and occasional names, but clarity is inconsistent. Instruments measuring temperature or vibration fluctuate in ways that correspond with perceived presence, yet offer no conventional explanation. Repeated visits reveal consistent patterns. Travelers report the same pacing figures, creaking bridge, entering presences, and whispered names. The recurrence suggests that Hollow Creek Stop retains memory, responding subtly to visitors in ways that transcend ordinary physics. Each crossing reinforces the impression of observation, interaction, and layered presence. The surrounding creek and platform amplify the effect. Trees and brush obscure vision and dampen distant sound. Darkness settles quickly, leaving the platform and tracks as the focal point of perception. Even the flowing creek beneath seems aware, reflecting shapes and light in irregular, shifting patterns. Physical sensations remain vivid. Travelers feel weight and movement at their backs, a subtle pressure along arms, and an almost tactile sensation of unseen hands. Goosebumps rise spontaneously, hairs along the neck and arms lift. The effect is deliberate, measured, and persistent, reinforcing the sense that the stop, the bridge, and the rails are attentive to movement. Some leave shaken. Passengers recall being called by name, glimpsing shapes at the edge of vision, and feeling a presence inside the car or on the platform. Footsteps echo, bridge creaks resonate without weight, and shadows remain imprinted on memory. Shadows behave naturally by day. The bridge bears weight predictably, and the platform is quiet. Yet nightfall awakens the space into perception and presence, layering sound, movement, and attention into an experience that ordinary daylight cannot reveal. Travelers depart carrying memory. The pacing figures, whispered names, unseen entries into cars, and creaking bridge remain vivid. Hollow Creek Stop leaves a lasting impression of a place that observes, responds, and interacts subtly with every step, every glance, and every presence. By day, it is a simple platform and bridge. By night, it becomes alive with shadows, whispers, and observation. Travelers leave aware that Hollow Creek Stop is more than a waypoint, it is a space where presence and perception converge, leaving memory indelible, awareness heightened, and the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary. Iron Cross Station sits at the edge of an abandoned rail line, its platform weathered and cracked, wooden beams sagging under decades of neglect. By day, the station is silent and deserted, a relic of past travel. By night, it transforms into a space of unease, where perception and reality seem to shift with every step. The lights above the platform flicker intermittently. Shadows dance across the walls, elongated and twisted by the wavering glow. Observers report that the shadows sometimes move independently of themselves, shifting along the tracks, appearing to follow movement while remaining impossible to locate. The irregular lighting amplifies the sense that the station is alive, watching and aware of those who enter. Visitors describe figures climbing aboard trains that no longer run. They appear suddenly, standing on the rusted steps or leaning against carriages. Their forms are human, but vague, blurred at the edges, as if made of smoke or mist. When approached, they vanish, leaving only the suggestion that they were ever there. Passengers swear they saw faces and gestures, yet no evidence remains when examined closely. The station emits a peculiar stillness, punctuated by faint creaks and groans of metal. Rusted rails moan under the slightest breeze. And wooden boards shift quietly. The sounds are magnified in the night, echoing down tracks that extend into shadows. Even experienced travelers feel a heightened awareness. Each movement measured and deliberate, attuned to the subtle cues of the environment. Darkness seems to stretch the platform. Spaces between benches and railcars appear longer than they are. Shadows deepen along corners, suggesting forms where none exist. Travelers report a sense of presence pressing against their awareness. An almost tangible sensation of observation. Every footstep resonates, every creak of timber amplified, blending with the shifting shadows and flickering light. Figures appear with irregular timing. One moment, a visitor sees someone standing silently at the edge of a carriage. In the next, the space is empty. The movement seems coordinated with the observer, as if the station responds directly to presence. Each glimpse leaves a lasting impression, a memory of motion and awareness that persists beyond the immediate experience. The rails themselves contribute to the sensation. Rust reflects the light of flickering bulbs, creating subtle illusions of movement along the track. Faint glimmers suggest trains approaching, yet none arrive. The mind fills the gaps, interpreting the reflections and shadows as presence. As though the station's decay and light are orchestrated to heighten perception. Observers report a compounding effect over time. The longer one lingers, the more intense the awareness becomes. Shadows move more distinctly, figures appear with increasing clarity. The platform itself seems to stretch and fold. The environment enforces heightened attention, drawing visitors into a space where ordinary perception is suspended and replaced by acute sensitivity to sight, sound, and presence. Audio phenomena are subtle yet persistent. Faint metallic clinks. The occasional shuffle of steps. And the low hum of wind across empty carriages. Create an auditory layer that seems coordinated with visual impressions. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Even when no figure is visible, observers feel the presence of movement along the rails. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. A rhythm that corresponds neither to the wind nor to their own motion. Attempts to document the station using cameras or audio recorders are largely unsuccessful. Photographs capture the rails, platform, and structures, yet the figures vanish between frames. Recordings pick up ambient sounds, creaks, and wind, but fail to record the footsteps, voices, or subtle noises reported by visitors. The phenomena exist primarily in perception, vivid and undeniable yet impossible to capture fully. Visitors often leave with a lingering awareness. The memory of figures climbing aboard persists. Shadows stretching across tracks and flickering lights. The sensation of being watched. Of moving through space that is simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. Remains vivid. Explorers describe dreams in which the rails extend endlessly. Figures reappear, and shadows move independently of light. Iron Cross Station endures as both structure and experience. Every journey across the station is unique. Yet every observer reports the same sense of heightened perception, lingering presence, and subtle interaction with the environment. The station functions as infrastructure, yet it exists simultaneously as a threshold between ordinary reality and something uncanny. Shadows, light, sound, and memory converge to create an experience that engages fully every visitor. Iron Cross Station remains a place where perception is amplified, presence is undeniable, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary for all who pass along its rails. Moonlit Grove platform sits alone beneath the glow of a pale, full moon, its tracks stretching into darkness and mist. The station is quiet, abandoned in appearance, yet the air feels charged with a presence that cannot be ignored. Wooden benches line the platform, aged and weathered, casting long shadows across the concrete. Visitors approaching immediately sense a weight in the stillness, a quiet that feels deliberate, as if the platform itself is listening. Figures appear on the benches. They sit silently, their forms pale and hollow, faces drawn with features that seem both human and unreal. Observers notice movement only in the subtlest gestures, a slight tilt of the head, a hand shifting lightly across a lap. When looked at directly, the figures seem to dissolve, yet in peripheral vision, they remain, watching, waiting, and aligned with the rhythm of the night. Screams echo across the surrounding fields. The sound rises sharply, then fades with the wind, sometimes synchronized with distant trains that pass beyond sight. Their origin is impossible to pinpoint, and they carry a human tone that is amplified and distorted by open air. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the platform. Moonlight filtering through broken or empty windows forms irregular patterns on the ground. Shadows twist in ways that defy expectation, detaching briefly from benches or rails, moving independently of both observer and object. Each glance produces new alignments, shapes that appear closer or farther than the mind can reconcile. The platform amplifies perception. Every footstep echoes more loudly than expected, each sound of wind or distant train carries further. The rhythmic clatter of gravel under shoes becomes multiplied in perception, while distant echoes seem to arrive ahead or behind actual motion. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that space and time bend around the platform. Time feels stretched under the moonlight. Minutes may seem to last longer as observers walk along the benches or examine the tracks. Shadows shift independently, and the hollow figures remain visible only at the edges of vision. Every pause is magnified, and every glance becomes loaded with anticipation, as though the night itself is alive and attentive. The hollow figures respond to observation subtly. Movement of the observer triggers imperceptible adjustments in posture or position. Hands lift slightly, heads turn in synchronization, and peripheral vision detects faint alignment with gestures. They do not interact, speak, or respond directly, yet awareness of their attention is unmistakable. The platform carries sound that is layered and immersive. Distant trains rumble beyond sight, echoes bouncing across fields and tracks. Screams and whispers intertwine with these sounds, forming a tapestry of auditory tension. The effect makes orientation difficult and heightens focus on both environment and figure, producing an immersive sensation that persists with every step. The light glances off rails, benches, and tracks, creating illusions of movement. Reflections in puddles amplify forms that may not exist. Each angle produces new patterns of light and dark, blending the ordinary with the uncanny. Observers notice subtle distortions in perspective, making the platform appear both longer and narrower, simultaneously familiar and alien. Screams and whispers form a rhythm. The cries across the field sometimes coincide with distant trains, while whispers drift intermittently, merging with wind and echo. The combined soundscape produces heightened awareness, drawing attention to every movement along the tracks, every shadow along the platform, and every hollow figure waiting silently. Even the air carries a presence. A subtle pressure presses along the shoulders, heightening the sense of observation. The temperature seems slightly cooler, and each motion is registered with an intensity that ordinary perception does not allow. Footsteps, wind, and sound interact with perception to create the impression that the platform, the night, and the figures are acting in concert. Exiting the platform provides partial relief. As observers walk toward open ground, shadows retreat, the figures fade from view, and the cries dissipate into the night. The moonlight remains constant, yet the memory of presence, alignment, and sound lingers. Awareness of observation, echoes, and the subtle tension of the environment persists, leaving a lasting impression on the mind. Moonlit Grove platform endures as a threshold. It is ordinary in construction yet extraordinary in perception. Bench, rails, and tracks anchor the site physically, while shadows, hollow figures, and echoes animate experience. Every visitor contributes to the ongoing memory, reinforcing the sense that observation, sound, and presence are continuous and persistent. The platform waits silently. Figures remain on benches, shadows stretch, and echoes ripple across tracks and fields. Screams rise and fade with the wind, while whispers linger in subtle currents. Moonlit Grove platform is a space where perception, memory, and environment converge. Where ordinary exploration becomes an immersive encounter, and where every arrival leaves a trace in the enduring presence of the night. Fogvale Stop sits at the edge of the tracks, a small wooden platform mostly hidden in thick fog that rolls in from the surrounding woods. The mist clings to the boards and the railing, dampening sound and swallowing light. The platform emerges gradually from the white haze, giving the impression that it is both present and fleeting, a structure suspended between visibility and concealment. Footsteps echo along the platform, soft and deliberate, yet the area is empty. Visitors report hearing them pace behind, moving closer, then fading into silence. The sound is distinct from their own steps, resonating across the boards and bouncing off the surrounding railings. The rhythm is irregular, sometimes slow, deliberate, and methodical, at other times quick and unpredictable. Those who pause feel the footsteps synchronize subtly with their own breathing, as if the space itself is aware of their presence. Shadows twist along the walls of the station, stretching and bending in ways that defy ordinary light. Sometimes they detach entirely, crossing the tracks or moving against the direction of illumination. Their motion is fluid and deliberate, never chaotic, suggesting intent without form. A shadow may stretch across a platform beam, flicker near a lantern, or glide along the edge of the tracks, disappearing when approached, leaving only the lingering impression of motion. The fog amplifies sound and disorients perception. A distant train whistle or the rustle of nearby trees carries unnaturally, echoing through the mist, and producing an illusion of distance and proximity that is impossible to measure. Travelers become acutely aware of each sound, each shift in pressure, each subtle movement. As the fog bends ordinary experience and magnifies anticipation. Travelers become acutely aware of each sound, each shift in pressure, each subtle movement, as the fog bends ordinary experience and magnifies anticipation. Light interacts strangely with the mist. Lanterns, flashlights, and passing headlights refract across the fog, creating halos and shifting patterns that suggest shapes where none exist. Reflections in puddles appear elongated or doubled, distorting the familiar. Shadows and mist converge to create an immersive, almost liquid landscape, where boundaries between platform, tracks, and fog become uncertain. Time perception shifts within fog veil stop. Moments stretch or compress unpredictably. Footsteps may repeat, echoes linger beyond expectation. And shadows appear to anticipate movement. The platform itself seems to impose its own rhythm on visitors. An internal cadence that is independent of ordinary measurement. This temporal disorientation heightens awareness of the fog, shadows, and phantom footsteps, leaving explorers uncertain of distance, duration, or direction. Visitors often report a subtle pressure on the chest. It is not cold, yet it weighs and presses steadily, producing a sensation of presence without form. A pulse that seems aligned with the movement of shadows. Some describe a faint vibration beneath their feet, a pulse that seems aligned with the movement of shadows and the rhythm of phantom footsteps. The platform and tracks appear both familiar and alien. Boards warp underfoot, rail ties shift subtly in perception. The edges of the platform seem to expand and contract. The fog transforms ordinary elements into dynamic features, creating a sense of space that is fluid, alive, and responsive. Visitors instinctively move cautiously, aware that the environment reacts to observation and attention. Sounds layer unpredictably. A distant clatter may come from nowhere, footsteps echo irregularly, and faint whispers drift through the mist. The voices are indistinct, sometimes rising above the sound of passing trains or the rustle of leaves, other times nearly imperceptible, yet unmistakable in presence. These auditory phenomena create a sense of depth, movement, and attention within the fog, reinforcing the perception of an intelligent, observant space. Shadows and fog interact continuously. Figures may appear fleetingly in the distance, indistinct in outline, wearing shapes reminiscent of travelers from another era. They linger at the edge of perception, vanish when approached, and reappear elsewhere on the platform or across the tracks. The repetition is subtle, creating a rhythm of encounter and absence that heightens tension and anticipation. Attempts to record the phenomena often fail. Cameras blur or distort the images of shadows and mist. Audio devices pick up static, whispers, and echoing footsteps without identifiable source. Technology struggles to capture the experience, leaving direct observation as the primary means of engagement. Visitors leave with memory and perception as their only evidence, carrying a vivid impression of the platform, fog, and shadows long after departure. Travelers exiting fog veil stop describe lingering sensations. The pressure in the chest, the echoing footsteps, the twisting shadows, and the immensity of the fog remain in thought. The platform feels both present and unreachable, a site where ordinary rules of perception, sound, and space are suspended. Memory of the experience endures, a persistent awareness of a place alive with observation and presence. Fog veil stop remains, hidden nightly in fog, silent to casual passers-by, yet alive to those who step onto its boards. Footsteps echo behind, shadows twist along walls, and the mist shifts with impossible intent. The platform, tracks, and fog converge into a space where perception, memory, and anticipation intersect, leaving travelers with a haunting and unforgettable experience long after the last trace of mist has lifted. Crimson Rail Station sits at the end of a forgotten track, its platform weathered and rust-stained. The iron rails gleam faintly under the moonlight, yet closer inspection reveals a deeper, darker stain. The scent of iron and damp earth hangs heavily in the air, mingling with the faint chill that seems to settle over the station regardless of season. The dark stain pools in irregular patches across the ground. A sense of foreboding settles over the station regardless of season. Visitors approaching the station feel a subtle tension in the atmosphere. The platform appears ordinary at first glance, yet the stains on the ground seem to shift imperceptibly with each step. Patterns emerge in the rust, darkening in some areas and appearing moist in others, as if the station itself is responding to presence. The effect is subtle, almost hypnotic, drawing attention toward the tracks and the spaces between them. Trains passing through the station produce unusual phenomena. Figures sometimes appear in windows, silhouetted against dim interior lights. They are human in form yet impossible to define clearly, appearing only briefly before vanishing entirely. Travelers report glimpsing faces staring directly at them, eyes that seem aware, and then the reflection or shape disappears as if it never existed. The fleeting encounters leave a lingering sense of observation and unease. A chill accompanies these visual experiences. Guests often report feeling cold hands brush lightly along their arms, shoulders, or backs. The touch is brief and insubstantial, yet unmistakable, producing goosebumps and heightened awareness. There is no force or threat, only the sensation of presence, as if the station itself monitors and acknowledges each movement. The station amplifies ordinary sounds in uncanny ways. Footsteps echo on wood and stone, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, creating the impression of multiple people present where none exist. The wind produces soft whistles through gaps in the roof and walls, forming patterns that mimic distant voices. The combination of sounds reinforces the impression that the station is alive, attentive, and responsive to visitors. Time and space seem distorted. Walking along the platform, distances appear longer or shorter than expected. Rails that should be uniform curve or shift slightly when observed indirectly. Shadows stretch across the ground and along walls, moving with subtle independence from light sources. Peripheral vision detects movement that disappears when directly confronted, heightening the sense that perception is unreliable. The rust-stained ground continues to draw attention. Travelers report moments where stains appear darker, almost liquid, reflecting faint moonlight as though wet. Pools shift slightly when not observed directly, changing shape or position, yet leaving no residue when examined closely. The subtle motion creates a sense that the station is active, aware, and interacting with presence in ways beyond ordinary explanation. Figures in train windows and reflections are unpredictable. They appear at random, sometimes close enough to suggest proximity, other times distant and fleeting. Direct observation causes them to vanish instantly. Peripheral glimpses capture movement that cannot be explained, producing a sense of attention and presence that persists long after the train has passed. A sense of attention and presence that persists long after the train has passed. Visitors report heightened psychological and physical effects. Skin prickles, the air feels heavier, and a subtle pressure is felt along the chest or back. The cold touch of unseen hands produces a sense of intimacy and unease. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile sensations creates a fully immersive experience. One that affects perception and focus throughout the exploration of the platform and surrounding tracks. Attempts to document these phenomena are rarely successful. Cameras capture the rust-stained ground, faint shadows, and the shape of trains passing. Yet the fleeting figures in windows and subtle touches remain elusive. Audio equipment records ambient echoes and wind through gaps, but the sensation of hands and the shifting stains are absent. The station resists capture, leaving its mysteries preserved for those physically present. The environment of Crimson Rail Station shapes behavior. Moving slowly allows exploration with reduced intensity of effects, though the figures and touches persist subtly. Rapid movement increases awareness of sounds, shadows, and fleeting visual encounters. The station influences perception, guiding attention without overt interaction, producing an immersive, disorienting, yet non-violent experience. When leaving the station, visitors carry the memory of rust-stained ground, fleeting figures in train windows, and the cold, ghostly touch along arms and shoulders. Awareness of movement, space, and observation remains heightened for some time afterward. The combination of visual, tactile, and auditory phenomena leaves a lasting impression that ordinary locations cannot replicate. Crimson Rails Station endures as a place where rust, shadow, and perception converge. Figures appear and vanish in windows, stains shift subtly across the ground, and unseen hands leave fleeting traces of presence. The station remains ordinary in daylight yet transforms at night into a space alive with observation, subtle influence, and immersive experience. Travelers leave altered, carrying the sense that the station is aware, responsive, and unforgettable long after departure. Deadman's Crossing sits at the edge of a winding railway curve, where the steel tracks bend sharply along a shallow valley. By day, the crossing appears ordinary. Sunlight glints off the rails, the platform is weathered but solid, and the surrounding field stretches quietly into the distance. Travelers pause briefly before continuing along the road, unaware of the history embedded in the curve and the impressions left behind by years of tragedy. At night, the atmosphere changes. Visitors report hearing whistles, sharp and distant, as though a train approaches, yet no vehicle is near. The metallic grinding of wheels on rails echoes along the tracks, low and resonant, creating vibrations that travel through the ground beneath the feet. The sounds are deliberate, rhythmic, and impossible to attribute to passing traffic. Explorers feel the intensity of presence even in complete stillness. Figures appear along the tracks. At first, they are faint, silhouettes just beyond the reach of flashlight beams. When approached, they vanish instantly, leaving the tracks empty. Travelers report seeing them repeatedly, along curves and straightaways, always appearing at the edge of perception, fleeting and precise. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the platform and rails. The light of lamps and flashlights catches forms that bend and shift in ways that defy normal geometry. Beams of light seem to warp, exaggerating angles and lengthening corridors. Each sound is layered, bouncing unpredictably from rails, rock, and platform. Whistles and grinding overlap, creating a chorus that surrounds travelers. The noises appear to synchronize with attention and movement, as though the environment itself monitors presence and responds to awareness. Temperature shifts unpredictably. Cold patches sweep across skin and clothing, pressing against arms and necks without visible source. The air grows thick and heavy in some areas, light and breathable in others. Explorers feel an awareness in the atmosphere, as if the environment itself is alive, observing every movement, every step taken along the rails. Time and space distort. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. Distances between the platform, tracks, and surrounding terrain feel longer than possible. Shadows shift independently of light. Figures vanish when focused upon and reappear elsewhere, maintaining observation. Travelers note that perception of motion, distance, and duration is unreliable within the crossing at night. The crossing preserves memory of past events. Whispers of footsteps, echoes of metal, and the intensity of watching figures suggest a continuation of presence beyond physical reality. The atmosphere carries traces of derailments, of movement frozen in memory. Explorers report that the space feels charged, aware of history, and subtly interactive with those who pass. Sounds and motion interact. Footsteps echo in counterpoint to those of the travelers. Figures move in rhythm with perception, appearing in peripheral vision before vanishing. Visitors report physical sensations. The sensations are brief but persistent, creating the impression of interaction, measurement, and awareness from unseen sources. Attempts to record the phenomena produce inconsistent results. Cameras capture tracks, platform, and surrounding fields, yet the figures and spectral movements rarely appear. Audio devices pick up echoes, low rumbles, and occasional metallic resonance, but the clarity of whistles or grinding is inconsistent. Temperature and motion sensors fluctuate, corresponding with reported cold and pressure, yet offer no conventional explanation. Repeated experiences reveal consistency. Travelers describe the same figures, the same metallic sounds, the same irregular whispers and cold. Patterns emerge, suggesting continuity of awareness. The crossing reacts subtly to the presence of observers, producing similar sensations for each visitor, reinforcing the perception that Deadman's Crossing retains memory and responds deliberately. Some explorers leave shaken. They awaken with impressions of figures at the edge of vision, metal grinding in memory, and footsteps echoing in the mind. Shadows linger in recollection, sounds persist, and awareness of the crossing's presence endures long after leaving. Deadman's Crossing functions normally by day. The rails bear weight predictably. Footsteps on the platform are ordinary. Shadows align with light, and the curve appears standard. Yet nightfall awakens the crossing into perception and presence, layering sound, motion, and attention into an experience that ordinary daylight cannot reveal. Travelers leave carrying memory. The figures, whistles, grinding metal, shadows, and cold sensations remain vivid. Deadman's Crossing leaves a lasting impression of a place that observes, reacts, and interacts subtly with every step, glance, and presence. The stop endures, both ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is a curve in the tracks and a simple platform. By night, it becomes alive with observation, sound, and motion. Travelers depart aware that Deadman's Crossing is more than a rail stopa, it is a threshold where presence, memory, and perception converge, leaving awareness heightened, ordinary reality suspended, and memory indelibly marked. Blackwater platform stretches along a quiet section of the river, its wooden planks weathered and slick from years of wind and rain. By day, the platform is simple and unremarkable, a place where boats dock and passengers wait. At night, however, the space transforms. Shadows deepen beneath the structure, and the surface of the water begins to reflect images that do not exist. Figures appearing briefly and dissolving into the ripples. Visitors notice the effect immediately. Reflections of people stand or move on the water, yet no one is present on the platform or along the shore. The figures shift with the subtle movement of the current, creating an impression of life without origin. Observers report that these reflections appear to watch them, eyes following as they move along the boards, yet vanish entirely when looked at directly. Faint laughter drifts upward from beneath the platform. The sound is soft and intermittent, human in quality but impossible to locate. Whispers mingle with the laughter, delicate and unintelligible. Weaving through the wooden supports and resonating across the water. The noises rise and fall unpredictably, sometimes synchronized with the movement of the reflections, other times independent. Creating a layered auditory environment that unsettles visitors. Shadows move independently of anyone walking nearby. Observers describe them stretching along the beams, darting across the boards, or appearing in corners where no light touches. They shift with a fluidity that defies ordinary physics, changing size and form in ways that feel deliberate. When a person approaches a shadow, it recedes or alters direction, as if aware of the observer. The combination of moving shadows, water reflections, and faint sounds creates a sensation of being immersed in a space alive with presence. The structure of the platform amplifies the phenomena. Gaps between planks, the angles of the supports, and the reflections on the water all interact to create distorted perception. Each step across the wood echoes unnaturally, blending with distant noises and reinforcing the sense of unseen watchers. The longer visitors remain, the more acutely aware they become of every sound, shadow, and subtle change in light. Even stillness does not bring relief. Standing on the platform, observers feel a pressure in the air, a subtle insistence of presence around them. Water ripples without wind or boat activity. Laughter rises. And shadows shift. Every attempt to focus on a single phenomenon reveals another layer elsewhere. A shadow moving across a beam. A reflection rising in the current. A whisper circling through the wooden supports. Visitors describe a compounding effect over time. The senses are heightened, perception is stretched. Footsteps echo in ways that make it difficult to gauge size or location. Reflections appear closer than they should, shadows longer than reality allows. And the laughter and whispers intensify when attention is focused. The laughter and whispers intensify when attention is focused. Animals avoid the platform at night. Birds remain silent, and fish do not break the surface. The absence of natural life accentuates the effects, creating an environment in which every movement, every sound, every ripple feels intentional. The combination of isolation, reflections, and shadows reinforces the impression that the platform is more than a physical structure. Attempts to document the phenomena are largely inconclusive. Photographs capture the platform, planks, and water, but fail to register the reflections or shadows reported by visitors. Audio recordings pick up wind, water, and creaks of wood, but not laughter or whispers. The experience exists primarily in perception, vivid and undeniable for those present yet elusive to technology. Time spent on Blackwater platform is experienced differently than ordinary passage. Moments stretch and compress unpredictably. Shadows alter independently. And laughter and whispers move around observers, creating a heightened state of awareness and immersion. The mind struggles to reconcile the sensory input, creating a heightened state of awareness and immersion. Even after leaving, visitors retain the memory of the platform. The sensation of reflections watching, shadows shifting independently, and whispers circling in the air lingers. Dreams echo the experience, repeating forms and sounds in fragmented sequences, reinforcing the intensity of the encounter. Travelers carry with them the knowledge that the platform exists in layers beyond ordinary perception. Blackwater platform endures, its wooden planks, beams, and adjacent waters shaped by time, weather, and currents, yet animated by phenomena that defy explanation. Reflections appear in still water, shadows move across the structure without cause. And laughter and whispers circulate beneath the boards. Every journey across the platform is immersive, engaging senses fully, and leaving a lasting impression on perception. The platform functions as a place of passage, yet simultaneously as a threshold into something extraordinary. Reflections, shadows, and sound converge to create an environment that is alive, responsive, and unforgettable. Blackwater platform exists both as physical structure and as space of layered perception, where every observer experiences presence, movement, and awareness beyond the ordinary, leaving all who visit with a memory that persists long after departure. Elderwood Station lies hidden deep within a forest of ancient trees, where sunlight filters through dense canopies and shadows stretch long across moss-covered ground. Figures emerge from the woods. They appear at the edges of vision, partially obscured by trunks and undergrowth. Observers sense their presence before fully seeing them, and the figures seem to follow silently, keeping pace along the platform with a deliberate, synchronized motion. No sound announces them, yet the awareness of being watched grows with each step. Footsteps echo unnaturally along the wooden planks. Doors open in empty train cars. Occasionally, a distant metallic creak carries across the tracks, and train doors swing open without human touch. The sound is precise, measured, yet it cannot be traced to any source. A gust of wind may coincide, but the timing often feels deliberate, synchronized to the presence of those who walk the platform. Shadows behave independently. Light filters unevenly through the trees and gaps in the station structure, casting elongated and distorted forms. Some shadows detach briefly, stretching along the platform or into the woods before returning to their source. They mimic motion in subtle ways, sometimes reflecting movement of the observer, other times shifting in directions contrary to expectation. Time feels altered at Elderwood. Minutes stretch while walking the platform. Peripheral perception dominates, drawing attention to corners, gaps between trees, and the far ends of the tracks. Observers report that sounds seem to precede movement, or echo after it, creating a sense that the station anticipates each step and registers presence beyond ordinary measure. The forest interacts with perception. Branches sway with no apparent wind, leaves fall in irregular patterns, and the weight of the trees seems to press inward, concentrating awareness on the platform and tracks. Every movement by the observer is amplified by rustling foliage, distant snaps of twigs, and echoes through the undergrowth, reinforcing the sense that the station is alive to human presence. They remain at the edges of vision, following motion across the platform without interaction. Sounds layer with environment. Footsteps mix with distant rustling, creaking boards, and the occasional metallic swing of doors. The combination creates an auditory landscape that confounds simple origin, producing a continuous sense of observation. Whispers drift through the air, faint yet precise, sometimes urging caution, other times seeming to echo the observer's own thoughts. The platform itself is both physical and perceptual. Wooden planks, benches, and rails anchor space, yet perception is shaped by shadows, sound, and presence. Light, natural and artificial, interacts with the environment to create illusions of movement and depth. Spaces appear longer or narrower depending on angle, and the alignment of figures and shadows creates a dynamic interaction that feels both deliberate and responsive. Footfalls outside the station continue after leaving. Travelers report hearing echoes of their own steps along the forest path or gravel, faint at first, then aligning in rhythm with movement. The effect is subtle but persistent, leaving the impression that Elderwood Station extends its awareness beyond the physical platform. The station preserves memory. Every figure, every sound, every shadow contributes to the ongoing presence of the place. Echoes of past visitors and unobserved figures layer with current perception, creating a sense of continuity that makes the platform, tracks, and surrounding forest feel alive with history and attention. Creating a sense of continuity that makes the platform, tracks, and surrounding forest feel alive with history and attention. Exiting Elderwood provides relief, but not detachment. Shadows retreat into the forest, doors cease to move, and the echoes of footsteps fade. Yet the awareness of observation remains. Peripheral perception recalls movement, the faint sound of distant doors, and the synchronized figures in the woods. Observers carry the memory of presence long after leaving. Elderwood Station endures as a threshold. It is ordinary in construction, extraordinary in perception. Tracks, planks, and benches anchor the environment physically, while shadows, figures, and echoes animate experience. Each visitor adds to the ongoing memory, reinforcing awareness that the station, the forest, and the hidden figures maintain continuous observation. The station waits silently. Figures linger at the edges, shadows twist along the platform, and the faint creak of doors resonates intermittently. Wind rustles through trees, footsteps echo faintly on gravel, and the forest maintains vigilance. The forest maintains vigilance, and Elderwood Station is a place where presence, memory, and perception converge. Transforming ordinary exploration into an immersive encounter where every arrival leaves a lasting imprint on the enduring awareness of the hidden platform. Where every arrival leaves a lasting imprint on the enduring awareness of the hidden platform. Silver Moon Stop rests quietly along an abandoned railway line, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight. The rails shimmer under the night sky, reflecting silver across the ground and illuminating the edges of the platform in soft, otherworldly light. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and aged timber from the weathered platform. Every step on the wooden boards echoes, sharp and deliberate, blending with the whisper of wind through the surrounding brush. Moonlight on the rails often reveals something unsettling. Faces appear pressed against the windows of abandoned train cars, pale and fleeting. Their features are indistinct, yet unmistakably human. No one occupies the cars, and when approached, the faces vanish or fade, leaving only the reflection of the moon glinting against glass. Travelers describe the sensation as being watched, a quiet, pressing awareness that persists even after the images disappear. Visitors report sudden dizziness while lingering on the platform. The ground seems to tilt subtly, and balance feels difficult to maintain. Light bends strangely, reflections shimmer, and shadows stretch unnaturally along the tracks. The effect is disorienting, producing nausea and a heightened sensitivity to sound, light, and motion. Even small movements are amplified in perception, as if the environment subtly interacts with attention. As the lead investigator stumbles, the world around them descends into chaos. Faint cries echo along the rails, drifting from unknown distances. They rise and fall unpredictably, sometimes sounding near, other times distant. The origin is impossible to locate. The echoes interact with the natural acoustics of the abandoned station, creating the impression of multiple sources and layering of sound. Travelers often pause, straining to listen, only to find silence in the spaces between cries, yet the sensation of presence remains. The platform itself seems alive in perception. Boards creak subtly beneath weightless steps, shadows shift along rail ties, and the air feels heavier near the edges where reflections of faces appear. Travelers instinctively move cautiously, aware that ordinary rules of perception do not apply. Each step produces echoes that mingle with distant cries, intensifying the immersive sense of an environment that is both familiar and alien. Shadows along the platform and rails twist and bend in unusual ways. A shadow may stretch across the rails or drift along the edge of the platform, vanishing when approached. The combination of reflected moonlight, shadows, and echoing cries produces a landscape that is visually and aurally fluid, constantly reshaping perception and expectation. Time within Silver Moon Stop behaves unpredictably. Moments can feel elongated or compressed. A few steps along the platform may feel like miles. And echoes of cries may repeat long after they occur. Shadows and reflections linger or shift in ways that defy ordinary logic. Travelers often find themselves retracing paths unknowingly, guided by shifting perception rather than the physical environment. The abandoned cars along the tracks add to the unease. Windows reflect the moon in distorted patterns, amplifying the effect of appearing faces. Glass catches light in ways that create fleeting images of figures moving, kneeling, or staring. These illusions are brief, yet powerful, imprinting in memory long after the observer has moved on. The combination of light, reflection, and perception produces an immersive experience that feels alive. Sound and vibration interact subtly with perception. Small rustlings, the creak of boards, and distant echoes are amplified in the still air. The creak of boards, and distant echoes are amplified in the still air. The layering of auditory stimuli, combined with reflections and shadows, creates a continuous sense of presence. Travelers often report that the cries appear synchronized with steps or attention, rising in intensity as one approaches the rails or abandoned cars. The layering of auditory stimuli, combined with reflections and shadows, creates a continuous sense of presence. Visitors often attempt to record or photograph the environment. Yet technology resists documentation. Images blur, cameras capture distorted shapes or shifting shadows. And audio devices pick up static or cries without identifiable source. The station appears to resist ordinary observation, preserving its phenomena in perception and memory rather than on physical media. Even brief exposure leaves a lasting impression. The silver glow of the rails. The fleeting faces in windows. The twisting shadows. And the faint cries resonate in thought. Balance and perception remain subtly altered. And the sensation of being watched lingers. Travelers leave the platform carrying a vivid memory of an environment that exists simultaneously within and beyond ordinary experience. Silver Moon Stop endures, bathed in moonlight, silent to casual observation yet alive to those who step onto its boards. Reflections reveal impossible faces. Cries echo along empty tracks. And shadows twist along rails and platform. Time and perception bend, leaving travelers aware of presence, awareness, and memory intertwined. The station remains, a haunting place, where ordinary reality converges with the unseen, waiting for the next visitor to experience its spectral, immersive rhythm. Stormwatch platform stands isolated along a stretch of track battered by the elements. The structure is simple and exposed, a metal and wood platform, stretching into darkness, flanked by open rails and looming storm clouds. Lightning flashes illuminate the surrounding landscape, casting stark shadows across the platform. During storms, the air is thick with electricity, and the usual sounds of the wind and rain are punctuated by occasional rumbles that echo unnaturally through the rails. Lights along the platform flicker intermittently, swaying between brightness and darkness as if responding to the storm itself. Shadows stretch and warp, larger than they should be, bending along the beams and rails. Every flash of lightning produces new shapes, some fleeting, some lingering just long enough to suggest movement where none exists. Observers immediately notice that the storm changes perception, making familiar structures appear distorted and alive. Figures are sometimes seen pacing along the rails. They are human in form, but unmoving in detail, their outlines often blurred by rain, mist, or the flickering lights. They appear at a distance, pacing deliberately, disappearing when approached or looked at directly. Their presence is silent yet commanding, creating the impression that someone or something is watching over the platform, tracking movement and attention. Sounds are distorted and heightened by the storm. Travelers report hearing the rolling of wheels along the rails, though no train is near. The sound echoes from points along the track, occasionally coinciding with a flash of lightning or a shifting shadow. It is an auditory anomaly that produces tension and unease. A reminder that the platform itself is unpredictable, and that perception is altered by both storm and structure. The platform seems to respond to presence. Walking along the rails increases awareness of figures and shadows. Pausing produces a subtle intensification of flickering lights, and the impression of movement at the edge of vision. Peripheral vision captures forms that vanish when looked at directly, reinforcing the sense of an environment aware of human observation and presence. Physical sensations accompany perception. Explorers report chills, prickling skin, and sudden pressure along shoulders and back. The storm amplifies these feelings, carrying wind through gaps in the structure and cold water droplets across the skin. The combination of tactile, auditory, and visual cues produces a fully immersive environment, heightening attention and creating a sense of tension that persists even in areas of the platform removed from immediate observation. Time behaves unpredictably during storms. A brief pause may feel like minutes, while walking across the platform may produce the impression of altered distance or elongated corridors. The shadows and figures contribute to disorientation, as does the irregular rhythm of rolling wheels, flickering lights, and lightning flashes. Observers feel caught in a space where perception is manipulated by weather, structure, and subtle phenomena. Reflections and shadows are distorted by water pooling on the platform. Each flash of light creates new patterns, elongating forms, and producing illusory movement. Shapes emerge at the edge of vision, sometimes resembling pacing figures, sometimes simply bending shadows. The interplay between storm light and structural surfaces ensures that the platform appears alive, responsive, and unpredictable. Figures on the rails are never aggressive. They remain distant, pacing silently, observing without action. They remain distant, pacing silently, observing without action. They remain distant, pacing silently, observing without action. The effect is psychological, producing tension and a heightened sense of presence rather than direct threat. Observers feel as though their movement is noted, yet no interaction occurs beyond subtle observation. Observers feel as though their movement is noted, yet no interaction occurs beyond subtle observation, leaving only memory and the impression of attention. The effect is psychological, producing tension and a heightened sense of presence rather than direct threat. Auditory anomalies continue alongside visual ones. The rolling wheels repeat at irregular intervals, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. Footsteps echo differently across sections of the platform. Lightning amplifies distant rumbles into soundscapes that seem to interact with perception. The combination of sound, light, and shadow produces a layered, immersive experience that challenges conventional understanding of cause and effect. Explorers note that careful movement moderates effects slightly. Walking slowly and deliberately reduces the intensity of perceived presence, yet does not eliminate the appearance of figures or the rolling wheel sounds. The platform maintains influence over attention, perception, and focus, producing an environment that is immersive and psychologically compelling. Attempts to record the phenomena with cameras or audio equipment rarely reproduce the full experience. Flickering lights and shadows are captured, faint rolling sounds may appear, yet the figures and the perception of presence are absent. The storm amplifies the limitations of technology, preserving the experience as a subjective yet undeniable encounter. Exiting Stormwatch platform leaves a lingering impression. Observers carry memory of flickering lights, distorted shadows, pacing figures, and rolling wheels. Awareness of perception, movement, and attention remains heightened beyond the platform. The storm, structure, and subtle phenomena converge to create an environment that is immersive, disorienting, and unforgettable. Stormwatch platform endures as a place where weather, shadow, and perception converge. Figures pace silently along rails, lights flicker unpredictably, and sounds defy explanation. Travelers leave altered, carrying memory of an environment alive with observation, responsive to presence, and shaped by storm, structure, and subtle, unseen forces. Ashen Grove Station sits quietly at the edge of fields still blackened from recent fires. The platform is dusted with ash, gray and soft beneath footsteps, drifting slowly in the wind. During the day, the station appears abandoned, weathered wood and rusted rails blending into the ashen landscape. The air carries the faint scent of smoke and charred earth. Travelers passing by note the desolation, unaware of the phenomena that awaken when darkness settles over the platform. At night, the station transforms. Low chanting drifts through the air, carried on an unseen current. The voices are unfamiliar, resonant yet soft, repeating syllables in rhythm without pause. Explorers hear the sound echoing across the rails, traveling along the platform, filling the space with presence and tension. The cadence is deliberate, hypnotic, and impossible to trace to any physical source. Figures appear on the tracks. They kneel in circles along the rails, motionless yet purposeful. Observers note their positions changing subtly, patterns forming and reforming as if arranging themselves by unseen guidance. When approached, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only empty rails and a lingering sense of observation. Travelers report glimpsing them repeatedly, always appearing at the edge of vision and disappearing before attention can focus. Ash drifts through the station, moving as though alive. Soft gusts swirl it across the platform, carrying subtle movements that brush against clothing and skin. Shadows behave unnaturally. The light from lamps and flashlights stretches and folds, creating shapes that appear to move independently of the observers. Shadows lengthen across the platform, crawling along the rails, and retreating when examined. They reinforce the impression of active awareness, interacting with every movement and glance. Temperature fluctuates unpredictably. Cold patches press against skin and clothing without wind or draft. A sudden chill moves across the platform, brushing arms and necks as if testing attention. The air grows heavier near the tracks and lighter in other sections, creating a sensation that the station itself measures and responds to presence. The chanting echoes and layers. Voices overlap, creating a chorus that seems to come from every direction at once. Explorers report the uncanny sensation that the chant resonates not only in the air but within the mind itself, blurring boundaries between external and internal perception. Time becomes unreliable within the station. Minutes stretch and compress unpredictably. Steps feel longer than the distance suggests. Shadows and ash move in ways that make the platform appear both larger and smaller simultaneously. The kneeling figures vanish and reappear, the chanting rises and falls, creating a rhythm that warps awareness and perception. Attempts to document the phenomena produce inconsistent results. Cameras capture the platform, rails, and drifting ash, yet the figures kneeling on the tracks rarely appear. Audio devices register layered echoes and soft murmurs, but the chanting is often fragmented or missing. Temperature and motion sensors fluctuate in localized patterns, matching the sensations reported by visitors but offering no conventional explanation. Explorers report physical sensations. A light brush along the shoulder, a tug at clothing, or the faint pressure of air accompanies movement. Goosebumps rise unexpectedly, hairs along the arms lift, and a subtle vibration seems to follow footsteps along the rails. The effect is deliberate, measured, and persistent, reinforcing the impression that the station monitors presence and attention. Some visitors leave shaken. They recall the kneeling figures, the chanting voices, and the drifting ash. The sound of syllables repeats internally, and the cold sensation persists. Even after leaving the station, the experience remains vivid, shaping perception long after the journey ends. Repeated visits reveal consistent patterns. Travelers consistently report the same phenomena: kneeling figures, drifting ash, layered chanting, shifting shadows, and cold sensations. The recurrence suggests the station retains awareness and reacts subtly to every presence, creating a consistent yet unpredictable experience. The surrounding burned fields enhance isolation. Trees and brush block distant sounds, amplifying the effects within the station. Darkness settles quickly, enclosing travelers in an environment where attention is heightened and ordinary perception is distorted. The platform appears solid, the rails aligned, and shadows behave naturally. Yet nightfall awakens the station, layering sound, movement, and awareness into an immersive experience that ordinary daylight cannot reveal. Footsteps sound as expected, the air is still, and the kneeling figures are absent. Yet nightfall awakens the station, layering sound, movement, and awareness into an immersive experience that ordinary daylight cannot reveal. Travelers depart carrying memory. Shadows, kneeling figures, drifting ash, chanting voices, and cold sensations remain vivid. Ashen Grove Station leaves a lasting impression of a place that observes, responds, and interacts subtly with every step, glance, and presence. The station endures, both ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is a simple platform among charred fields. By night, it is alive with shadows, sound, and movement. Travelers leave aware that Ashen Grove Station is more than a stop along the tracks. It is a space where perception, presence, and memory converge, leaving ordinary reality suspended and the mind indelibly marked. Wailing Pine Stop lies deep within a forest where the trees grow thick and tall, their branches tangled like skeletal fingers reaching into the sky. By day, the platform seems abandoned, a simple wooden structure among the dense growth, its rails leading into the mist that clings to the undergrowth. By night, the area transforms, alive with sound, movement, and presence that is impossible to ignore. The trees themselves groan and creak with an almost human quality. Each gust of wind sends their limbs swaying, joints cracking, and bark whispering. The sound is amplified by the forest, resonating like distant voices or the strained breathing of people hidden among the trunks. Visitors report feeling the air vibrate with tension, a presence that seems to watch, waiting, and reacting to every movement. Figures emerge in the mist along the rails. Some stand motionless for minutes, while others appear to drift silently along the platform or between trees. Observers describe a sense of recognition, as if the figures are aware of being seen. Yet when approached, they vanish, leaving only the mist and an echo of presence behind. The platform amplifies every sound. Footsteps, the rustle of leaves, and even the soft hum of the wind resonate unnaturally, blending with the creaking of the pines. Visitors report the sensation of being surrounded, aware of movement in every direction, yet unable to locate a single source. Each step along the platform feels measured, deliberate, the weight of the forest pressing into the mind and heightening perception. Screams echo through the air when the wind blows. They rise suddenly from the tree lean, human in tone, filled with anguish, and fade just as quickly. The sound carries along the rails, bouncing between trees, platform, and tracks. Observers feel the echoes press against their chest, a vibration of sound that seems directed, intentional, and impossible to ignore. Even when the wind dies, faint traces of the noise linger, a memory of the forest's resonance and a reminder of the presence that inhabits it. Shadows move independently of anyone nearby. Shadows stretch across the platform, dart between trees, shift along the tracks. Observers report the feeling of being followed, of shapes responding to their movements without explanation. Shadows merge with the fog, dissolving and reappearing, creating a layered perception of space that challenges ordinary understanding. The mist itself contributes to the disorientation. Figures appear in the fog that vanish when approached, their forms partially obscured, leaving an impression rather than a clear image. The combination of mist, shadow, and light creates an environment that feels alive, responsive, and immersive. Visitors describe the interplay of sound, shadow, and air as cumulative. The longer one remains, the more intense the experience becomes. Screams echo more vividly, shadows stretch further, and the figures in the mist appear more distinct. Awareness heightens with every movement, each sense engaged fully. Time seems to stretch and compress, the forest transforming from a passive space into an active participant in perception. Attempts to record the phenomena are largely unsuccessful. Photographs capture only the platform, trees, and fog, leaving out the figures and shadows. Audio recordings capture the wind and natural sounds, yet the screams, groans, and whispers reported by visitors do not appear. The forest exists simultaneously in physical space and perception, vivid and undeniable to those present, yet elusive to technology. The forest is vivid and undeniable to those present, yet elusive to technology. Animals avoid the platform at night. Birds do not call, and nocturnal creatures skirt the edges of the clearing. The absence of ordinary wildlife reinforces the sense of isolation, amplifying the perception of unseen activity. Every sound, movement, and shadow becomes significant, creating an immersive environment where ordinary rules of space and perception do not apply. The experience of wailing pine stop lingers after departure. Visitors recall the creaking trees, the figures in the mist, and the screams echoing across the rails. The figures in the mist, and the screams echoing across the rails. Visitors recall the creaking trees, the figures in the mist, and the screams echoing across the rails. Even in dreams, the forest repeats itself, shadows moving along the tracks, figures standing silently, and the cries carried by the wind. Observers leave with a heightened awareness, a memory that persists, and an understanding that the forest and platform are more than they appear. Wailing Pine Stop endures as both a physical location and a space of perception. The trees creak like people. Figures appear and vanish in the mist. Shadows move independently. Screams echo across the platform. Each journey into the forest is immersive, engaging every sense, and leaving a lasting impression on those who enter. The site exists at the boundary of the ordinary and the extraordinary, where perception, sound, and presence converge, ensuring that the stop is remembered long after the mist clears. Shadow Hollow Crossing is nestled within a shallow ravine, where steep earthen walls rise on either side, enclosing the tracks and platform in a muted, shadowed space. Shadows move independently along the walls and tracks. Observers report shapes shifting and stretching across stone, timber, and steel without cause. A shadow may detach briefly from a support beam or railing, moving ahead or behind a passenger, then settle as if nothing occurred. Movement is subtle but persistent, producing an uneasy awareness that the station itself is alive, responsive, and observing. Passengers feel unseen eyes. Even when the platform is empty, the sensation of being watched is intense. Peripheral vision captures movement at the edge, yet nothing is present when looked at directly. The feeling is constant, concentrated, and inescapable, leaving travelers tense and hyper-aware of each step, glance, and motion along the tracks. Footsteps echo unnaturally along wooden planks and gravel, amplified by the walls of the ravine. The combination of echoes and shadows creates a sensory distortion, making distance and direction difficult to judge and producing a heightened awareness of presence. Time feels altered within the ravine. Minutes stretch and contract unpredictably. A short walk along the platform can feel extended, while standing still may seem instantaneous. Shadows shift in the same moment that footsteps echo, creating a disorienting rhythm that makes perception fluid. Observers often report losing track of where the platform begins and the natural earth ends, as the ravine blurs boundaries of space. The tracks themselves are alive with reflection. Metal rails catch sparse light and reflect distorted forms of passengers and shadows. Whispers drift along the hollow. Soft, indistinct murmurs appear to follow passengers, sometimes rising with the creak of the platform or the shifting of loose gravel. The words are unintelligible but deliberate in tone, blending with the natural echo of the ravine to create an immersive auditory presence that reinforces the sensation of observation. The walls preserve memory. Earth and stone carry echoes of prior crossings, footsteps, and voices. Each visitor contributes imperceptibly to the ongoing awareness embedded in the structure. Shadows seem to respond to motion, adjusting subtly to steps, glances, and posture, giving the impression that history and memory coalesce into living perception. Light interacts with shadow and depth. Sparse illumination filters through the shallow opening of the ravine, producing distorted lines and elongated shapes along the platform and tracks. Shadows stretch unnaturally, sometimes detaching or merging with neighboring forms. Peripheral vision captures forms that vanish when directly observed, reinforcing the uncanny sensation of the hollow. Passengers experience heightened awareness. Every step feels heavier, every glance sharper. Peripheral shadows mirror movement subtly, and whispers blend with echoes of footfalls. The combination produces a sense of constant observation, a persistent tension that is both invisible and undeniable. Even outside the station, effects linger. Travelers leaving the platform report the sensation of movement following them along gravel paths. Footsteps echo in rhythm with their own steps, shadows seem to linger at the edges of vision, and the perception of unseen eyes remains. Shadows, echoes, reflections, and whispers interact in a continuous cycle, creating an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Each visitor becomes part of this cycle, contributing to the ongoing observation embedded in walls, tracks, and platform. The platform preserves the rhythm of awareness. Shadows, echoes, reflections, and whispers interact in a continuous cycle, creating an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Exiting Shadow Hollow Crossing provides relief, but the impression persists. Shadows fade with distance, echoes subside, and whispers diminish. Yet memory of movement, observation, and altered perception remains, leaving travelers aware that the station continues its vigilance. Awareness of unseen watchers, autonomous shadows, and distorted echoes lingers long after the ravine is behind. Shadow Hollow Crossing endures as a liminal space. Ordinary in construction, extraordinary in effect, the station, platform, and tracks are physical anchors for a perceptual environment shaped by shadow, sound, and memory. Shadows shift along walls and tracks, echoes ripple through the platform, and whispers rise with the wind. Shadow Hollow Crossing is a place where perception, memory, and environment merge, transforming a simple journey into an immersive encounter, where every arrival leaves an imprint on the enduring presence of the hollow. Cragtop platform perches precariously at the edge of a cliff, surrounded by jagged rocks that rise sharply into the sky. The station is small, wooden, and weathered, its boards creaking under even the lightest steps. Wind sweeps across the precipice, carrying the scent of stone, earth, and distant sea spray. Shadows stretch across the rocks, shifting with the movement of the sun or the moon, and the platform seems both fragile and eternal, a lonely sentinel atop the rugged landscape. Figures appear intermittently on the cliffs, silent and unmoving. Their forms are human in outline, yet pale and indistinct, blending with the jagged stone. They watch the platform, their gaze implied though impossible to confirm. Travelers approaching feel a prickling awareness, as though each step is observed. The figures remain motionless when noticed directly, vanishing when the eyes shift away or when movement is approached, leaving only the sense of presence behind. The air carries an unusual resonance. Travelers often hear metal clanging, sharp and rhythmic, like the wheels of trains running on tracks that do not exist. The sound echoes across the rocks and platform, rising and falling as if a phantom train is approaching and receding. Footsteps echo in tandem with the clanging, yet no motion or object can be identified. The combination of auditory phenomena creates tension, a blend of anticipation and unease that permeates the platform. The platform boards respond to the environment subtly. Creaks resonate underfoot in patterns that suggest weight or pacing from unseen forms. The wind interacts with the structure, producing low whistles and moans that merge with the clanging. The wind interacts with the structure, producing low whistles and moans that merge with the clanging. Travelers feel their movement mirrored by sound, shadows, and vibration, as if the station itself is attentive, recording each presence and echoing it back. Time perception shifts atop Cragtop platform. Moments stretch or compress unpredictably. The sound of clanging may repeat long after the initial onset. Shadows extend across the jagged rocks and platform in ways that seem to anticipate movement. The cliffs themselves appear to shift subtly in perspective, producing an impression of spatial fluidity, elongation, and distortion. Travelers often retrace steps unknowingly, drawn into the rhythm of echoes, shadows, and unseen figures. Light interacts with the rocks and platform to enhance the sense of presence. Sunlight or moonlight catches on wet stones, reflecting and refracting along boards and cliff faces. Shadows move independently of light, elongating, twisting, and crossing paths in impossible ways. Reflections on metallic surfaces of bolts or rails capture shapes that vanish when approached. The interplay of light, shadow, and reflection produces a dynamic, immersive environment that heightens perception and awareness. Visitors frequently experience a pressing weight while on the platform. The sensation is subtle at first, a constriction across the chest and shoulders, growing as one moves closer to the edges or toward the cliffs where figures are observed. The weight is accompanied by heightened awareness of sound, shadow, and motion. Travelers instinctively slow, their senses sharpened by the environment's subtle responses. The cliffs amplify auditory effects. Clanging, footsteps, and whispers echo unpredictably, creating the impression of multiple presences at different distances. The sound of the phantom train blends with natural wind, and the resonance of rock producing a layered immersive experience. Travelers report that the noise seems to anticipate movement, rising when attention is focused and fading when it shifts, reinforcing the sensation that the platform and cliffs are alive in perception. Figures appear intermittently and briefly. They may stand at the edge of rocks, partially obscured by shadow, or move across cliff faces in slow, deliberate patterns, vanish when approached or when the eyes focus directly, leaving only the memory of form, posture, and intent. Their presence is consistent in repetition, producing a rhythm of appearance and absence that feels deliberate and integrated with the platform's soundscape. The perception of space is altered. Jagged rocks seem closer or farther than they are. The platform feels longer or narrower depending on movement and angle of observation. Shadows and sound produce a sensation of depth beyond the physical dimensions of the site. Travelers often sense that the cliffs, platform, and phantom elements are interconnected, a cohesive, responsive environment that reacts to presence and attention. Attempts to document cragtop platform often fail. Cameras produce blurred images or capture unexpected shadows. Audio equipment records clanging, static, or echoes that do not correspond to visible sources. The site resists ordinary observation, preserving its phenomena through experience rather than recording. Memory becomes the primary record, vivid and immersive, shaped by sound, shadow, and movement. Visitors leave the platform with lingering impressions. The jagged cliffs, silent watchers, phantom train sounds, and subtle weight on the chest remain in thought and perception. The platform feels both present and otherworldly, a space that is fragile yet eternal, alive in shadow, echo, and anticipation. The sensation of being observed, of standing within a place where ordinary rules of sound, space, and perception bend, endures long after departure. Cragtop platform remains, perched atop jagged cliffs, silent to casual observers, yet alive to those who enter. Figures watch, shadows twist, and metal clanging resonates along invisible tracks. Time, space, and perception bend, leaving travelers aware of presence, memory, and rhythm intertwined. The platform endures, an isolated, immersive location where ordinary reality merges with something unseen, awaiting the next visitor to step into its echoing, shadowed expanse. Moonless Night Station sits at the edge of an abandoned rail line, its platform stretching into darkness that no moonlight penetrates. The surrounding trees block the horizon, their branches forming jagged silhouettes against an endless black sky. The air is cold and still, carrying a damp chill that seeps through clothing and clings to the skin. Visitors notice immediately that the absence of light intensifies every other sense, sharpening the perception of space, sound, and movement. Sharpening the perception of space, sound, and movement. A subtle draft moves along the platform, brushing against ankles and arms. The wind seems to carry no origin, drifting along empty rails and beneath benches, curling in corners and along walls. Travelers report that the cold intensifies when they pause, pressing like invisible fingers against the back or shoulders. Shadows dominate perception. Shapes form at the edge of vision, vague and shifting. Figures appear briefly in corners, silhouetted against darkness, always partially obscured by the surrounding blackness. When observed directly, they vanish instantly, leaving only the memory of their presence. The effect is disorienting, producing the sensation of being watched even when the platform appears empty. The rails themselves seem alive in the dark. Every footstep echoes unpredictably, sometimes amplified along the metal, sometimes muted as if absorbed by the blackness. The sound of approaching or departing trains is imagined by some visitors, a subtle vibration along the tracks that never resolves into reality. Ordinary perception of space and sound is altered, leaving explorers unsure where the platform ends and the surrounding darkness begins. The absence of light transforms familiar objects. Benches, railings, and signs appear distorted, lengths and angles stretched in subtle ways. Shadows merge and separate, creating the impression of movement where there is none. Peripheral vision captures shifting shapes, fleeting forms that vanish when attention is focused directly on them. The darkness becomes active, shaping perception and altering awareness. Visitors often feel physical sensations accompanying visual perception. A draft may brush the neck or arms, skin prickles along the forearms. And a chill rises unexpectedly across the back. The feeling of presence intensifies when figures are glimpsed at the edge of vision. Even without direct observation, the platform produces the sensation of eyes upon the visitor, observing silently and without motion. Movement along the platform requires careful attention. Walking too quickly increases the awareness of shadow and chill, while pausing produces a subtle, almost imperceptible increase in perceived observation. Each step seems measured, both by the individual and by the unseen forces shaping perception. Exploration becomes deliberate, cautious, and immersive. Sound behaves unpredictably. Floorboards creak where weight is absent. Loose debris shifts under imagined pressure. Distant echoes bounce off walls and rails, producing irregular auditory patterns. The combination of cold, darkness, and subtle sounds amplifies tension, creating an environment that is immersive and disorienting without direct threat. Figures in the darkness are elusive yet persistent. They emerge at the corner of vision, often near benches, rails, or stairways leading down from the platform. They do not approach or make contact, yet the sensation of being watched is unmistakable. Observers attempting to confront the figures directly find only empty darkness, the presence shifting or vanishing as if awareness itself causes disappearance. Time feels altered. Moments stretch or collapse unpredictably. Pausing on the platform may feel like minutes, while walking several steps produces the sensation of having traveled much farther than reality allows. Peripheral vision, shadows, and unseen observation combine to distort perception, making each movement deliberate and uncertain. Attempts to document the phenomena produce limited results. Cameras capture the platform, rails, and occasional indistinct shadows. Yet the figures and sensations remain absent. Audio records ambient creaks or distant echoes, but not the subtle perception of observation or the cold brush of invisible presence. Moonless Night Station remains resistant to capture, preserving its mysteries for those physically present. Despite the unsettling experiences, the platform is not hostile. There is no physical harm, no advancing figures, and no direct aggression. The darkness, shadows, and subtle sensations shape perception, heighten awareness, and produce tension without overt threat. The station exists as a psychological and sensory environment, immersive and compelling in its effects. Memory of cold drafts, elusive figures, shifting shadows, and altered perception of space and time leaves a lasting impression, shaping perception long after departure. Moonless Night Station endures as a place where darkness, shadow, and perception converge. Figures appear at the edge of vision and vanish instantly. Cold drafts press subtly along skin. Shadows stretch and shift beyond expectation. Visitors leave changed, aware that the platform exists as more than wood and rails, shaping attention, perception, and memory in ways ordinary environments cannot replicate. Broken will stop rests at the edge of an overgrown rail line, its wooden platform sagging and paint peeling. The roof is patched in places, the boards warped by years of wind and rain. By day, the station appears abandoned, quiet except for the sound of distant birds or the wind rustling through the surrounding grass. Travelers passing by might pause, noticing the stillness, but few linger. At night, the station reveals a different presence. Footsteps echo across the wooden planks, crisp and deliberate, yet no one walks there. Voices rise in the shadows. Soft crying drifts through the station, high-pitched and faint at first, gradually growing into distinct sobs. Travelers recognize the timbre of children, yet no one appears. Their origin is impossible to locate, creating a sensation that the sound surrounds and penetrates the mind simultaneously. Figures manifest on benches. Seats that were empty moments ago suddenly host shadowy forms. They sit silently, shoulders hunched, heads bowed. When approached, the figures vanish, leaving the benches empty once more. Visitors report glimpsing them repeatedly, appearing and disappearing unpredictably, sometimes mirrored in dim pools of light or the reflections of broken windows. Shadows stretch and bend unnaturally. Headlamps and lanterns illuminate shapes that shift independently of light sources. They lengthen across boards, crawl along walls, and retreat when observed directly. Each corner of the station seems to harbor motion, yet nothing fully resolves into form. Shadows merge and separate, reinforcing the impression that the station is aware of every presence within. Temperature fluctuates subtly. Cool drafts press against skin and clothing without visible origin. Cold rises along the back, brushing shoulders and necks, then fades, leaving warmth in other areas. Explorers feel the station itself measuring and responding, creating an immersive environment where attention and presence are in constant interaction. Footsteps, voices, and shadows create layered perception. Each echo combines with crying, overlapping with movement on the platform. The effect is disorienting, making it impossible to determine direction, distance, or source. Travelers feel surrounded on all sides, the station expanding in ways that defy ordinary spatial perception. Time becomes unreliable. Minutes stretch and compress unpredictably. Steps feel longer than distances suggest, benches appear farther apart, and shadows shift with an independent rhythm. Visitors often lose track of duration, experiencing seconds as minutes and distances as far greater than physical measurement allows. Attempts to document the phenomena yield inconsistent results. Cameras record the benches, platform, and broken windows, yet the figures rarely appear. Audio devices capture echoes, faint cries, and occasional murmurs, but the clarity of Childrina's voices is often lost. Sensors measuring vibration or temperature fluctuate in ways that correspond to visitor experiences, offering no conventional explanation. Repeated visits reveal persistent patterns. Travelers consistently report footsteps without origin, figures sitting on benches, shifting shadows, and crying voices. Each experience confirms the presence of awareness within the station. The phenomena appear consistent yet unpredictable, responding subtly to movement, attention, and proximity. Explorers report physical sensations. A fleeting touch along the shoulder, a cold brush against the arm, and goosebumps rising across the skin accompany the auditory and visual phenomena. The station interacts with presence without aggression, leaving a lasting impression that observation is constant and deliberate. Some visitors leave unsettled. They awaken recalling the crying, fleeting figures, and shifting shadows. Footsteps echo in memory, benches appear occupied in recollection. An awareness of the station persists beyond physical departure. The experience imprints itself on perception, creating a haunting memory that lingers long after leaving. Broken will stop functions ordinarily by day. Sunlight illuminates the platform, the benches are empty, and echoes behave normally. Footsteps register with expected resonance. The station appears solid and unremarkable. Yet nightfall awakens the space, layering sound, movement, and awareness into an immersive environment that ordinary daylight conceals. Travelers depart carrying vivid memory. The figures, shadows, footsteps, and crying voices remain in awareness. Broken Will Stop leaves the impression of a station that observes, reacts, and interacts subtly with every presence. It becomes more than a rail stop, transforming into a space where perception, memory, and awareness converge. The station endures, ordinary and uncanny. By day, it is a dilapidated platform among overgrown rails. By night, it is alive with observation, sound, and motion. Travelers leave understanding that Broken Will Stop is not merely a location, it is a threshold into a realm where ordinary reality is suspended, presence is tangible, and memory is indelibly marked. Fog Spire Crossing stretches across a narrow valley, its steel rails glinting faintly in the dim light before nightfall. By day, the bridge appears ordinary, a functional passage between ridges, sturdy and unremarkable. As evening descends, however, the area transforms. Thick fog rolls in early, swallowing the tracks, obscuring the landscape, and creating a dense, opaque veil that blurs perception and alters the familiar. The fog is heavy and cold, clinging to skin and clothing. Every sound becomes distorted, the creak of steel and rustle of wind echoing strangely. Visibility drops to a few feet, yet the mind perceives motion beyond the immediate field of sight. The atmosphere is alive, charged with anticipation. And the ordinary landscape seems to fade into something beyond comprehension. Figures appear walking along the rails. They are human in shape yet ethereal in form, their outlines blurred and shifting with the fog. Observers note that no footprints are left behind, yet the figures advance, pause, or turn as though fully present. They appear near and far in the mist, sometimes ahead of passengers, sometimes behind, always elusive, always watching. Whispers drift through the fog. Low, urgent, and compelling, they carry a sense of intention. Travelers describe voices urging them to leave immediately, the words insistent yet almost melodic. The sound moves independently of direction, passing from one ear to another, echoing off the rails and bridge supports. Listeners cannot locate the source, yet the effect is immediate, producing tension and a heightened awareness of every movement. The bridge itself seems to respond to the presence of observers. Every step amplifies sound, vibrations travel along steel. Faint echoes of movement appear where none should exist. The fog bends light and alters perception, making distances uncertain and direction unreliable, and familiar features become distorted, creating an environment where ordinary navigation feels impossible. The figures move with deliberate purpose. They do not interact with the fog or steel, yet their motion conveys intent. Observers note that when they attempt to approach, the figures vanish, dissolving into the mist. Despite their disappearance, the sense of presence remains. Each glimpse leaves a residue of awareness, a feeling that the crossing itself is alive and attentive to every observer. Each glimpse leaves a residue of awareness, a feeling that the crossing itself is alive and attentive to every observer. Auditory phenomena intensify the effect. The wind whistles through the trusses, the rails hum under the slightest vibration, and faint metallic creaks echo across the bridge. Layered atop these sounds are the whispers, subtle yet insistent, and occasional indistinct noises that suggest movement beyond perception. Observers describe the combination as immersive, creating tension and anticipation with every step. The fog itself is dynamic, swirling and drifting with unpredictable patterns. Shadows stretch and shift within the mist, sometimes forming shapes that mimic the observer, sometimes independent, creating a sensation of multiplicity and presence. Awareness is heightened as every sound, shape, and motion becomes significant. Even stationary observation does not provide safety. the figures continue their silent advance. Across accounts, figures without footprints, whispers urging departure, and the pervasive density of the mist. Attempts to document the phenomena often fail. Cameras record only the fog and structure, failing to capture the figures or their motion. Audio devices capture wind and structural noise but not the whispers. The experiences exist primarily in perception, vivid, immersive, and undeniable to those present, yet impervious to technological capture. Observers leave with heightened awareness, lasting tension, and memories that endure beyond the physical space. Time is altered on the crossing. Minutes stretch and compress unpredictably. The figures appear and vanish, shadows move independently. And whispers arise at intervals that defy pattern. Perception becomes acute, focused, and immersive. The bridge, fog, and figures create an environment where the ordinary and extraordinary merge, engaging all senses simultaneously. Fog spire crossing persists as a threshold between the natural and the unexplainable. Steel rails, fog, and bridge structure form the physical framework. Yet the space is animated by figures, whispers, and perception. Visitors experience layers of reality that shift with every step and glance. Leaving an enduring impression, a memory of mist, presence, and sound. A memory of mist, presence, and sound that persists long after departure. The bridge endures, fog rolling in, figures walking without footprints, and whispers carrying through the night. Every journey across engages perception fully, leaving travelers with a heightened awareness of presence, motion, and mystery. Fog spire crossing remains a place where ordinary reality is suspended, and the unseen becomes tangible, shaping every experience along the rails. Phantom Track Station lies at the edge of a dense forest, where rails vanish into the shadows of towering trees. The station is isolated, abandoned yet fully intact, a place where the weight of history presses quietly upon every surface. Wooden platforms are worn and splintered, benches line the edges, and moss creeps across stone and metal, softening edges while hinting at neglect. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, rotting leaves, and lingering moisture, carrying a heaviness that heightens awareness. Shadows follow vehicles and people as they approach. Observers notice shapes stretching along the tracks and platform, moving in subtle alignment with their own motion. A vehicle entering the station seems accompanied by dark forms sliding along the rails or skimming the edge of the platform. Shadows shift independently yet remain synchronized, a presence that is felt as much as seen, producing a sense of being observed from multiple angles. Screams echo from abandoned trains and buildings. The sound is abrupt, human in tone, yet distorted by distance and echo. The cries are impossible to locate precisely, suggesting movement within trains, buildings, and even along the forested tracks beyond. The effect is disorienting, amplifying the sense of isolation and tension. Footsteps on wooden planks reverberate far beyond the observer's expectation. Rustling metal and loose boards produce echoes that appear to move independently. The combination of sounds, shadows, and space alters ordinary perception, heightening every sense and drawing attention to the smallest detail. Rails stretch into darkness. Tracks disappear beneath the canopy of trees, their endings lost in shadow and fog. Each step along the platform or movement near the tracks feels accompanied, mirrored by unseen presence. Peripheral vision frequently captures movement along rails or the edge of forest, while direct focus often reveals nothing, reinforcing a sense of uncanny awareness. Time feels distorted at Phantom Track. Minutes stretch unpredictably. Standing on the platform or walking along the tracks may feel extended, while moving between trains or buildings can feel instantaneous. Echoes of sound, shifting shadows, and irregular illumination bend perception of distance and duration, making orientation difficult and keeping observers intensely aware. Abandoned trains appear occupied. Doors swing open with no wind, faint movements shift within shadows, and the metal surfaces reflect figures that are only partially visible. Observers feel as though the trains themselves are alive with residual memory, amplifying the sensation of being watched and followed. Light interacts unpredictably with shadows. Moonlight or ambient light filtering through trees casts elongated forms along the platform, rails, and train surfaces. Shadows detach briefly, stretch unnaturally, and twist along surfaces, producing forms that mimic or mirror movement, yet remain elusive and independent. Peripheral perception dominates experience, and every glance reveals subtle alterations in shape and position. The forest surrounds and amplifies isolation. Trees rise close along the edges of the station, forming natural walls that trap sound and enhance echoes. Wind carries rustling leaves, distant snapping twigs, and faint whispers. Screams and echoes layer continuously. Cries from trains, buildings, and distant forest combine with natural echoes and wind to create an auditory tapestry. Each new movement triggers subtle responses, and every echo seems synchronized to presence, producing a persistent tension. That cannot be escaped while within the station. Even after leaving, awareness persists. Footsteps continue to echo along gravel and rails. Peripheral shadows linger at the edge of vision, and the sensation of unseen eyes remains. Travelers carry the memory of synchronized shadows, distorted echoes, and the cries from trains and buildings, producing lingering awareness beyond the physical station. Travelers carry the memory of synchronized shadows, distorted echoes, and the cries from trains and buildings, producing lingering awareness beyond the physical station. Phantom track station preserves memory and presence. Each figure, shadow, echo, and step contributes to a layered environment that feels continuously observed. The station, the rails, and the surrounding forest interact with perception, producing an immersive and persistent impression of attention. Exiting the station offers partial relief. Shadows recede into forest, echoes fade into distance, and the air lightens. Memory of observation, the presence of abandoned trains, and cries from unseen spaces remains vivid. Travelers leave with a heightened sense of environment and lingering tension, knowing that the station continues its quiet vigilance. Phantom track station endures as a threshold. Ordinary in construction, extraordinary in effect, the platform, rails, trains, and forest interact to create an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Every arrival adds to the station's awareness, reinforcing the sense that shadows, echoes, and cries remain persistent and attentive. The station waits silently. Rails stretch into the forest, shadows shift along platforms, and echoes rise from abandoned trains and buildings. Wind rustles through trees, footsteps reverberate faintly, and presence persists beyond observation. Echoes rise from abandoned trains and buildings, wind rustles through trees, footsteps reverberate faintly, and presence persists beyond observation. Phantom track station is a place where perception, memory, and environment merge, transforming ordinary approach into an immersive encounter, leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and enduring vigilance. Transforming ordinary approach into an immersive encounter, leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and enduring vigilance. Leaving every traveler with a lasting impression of observation, shadow, and enduring vigilance. Thank you for walking through these haunted train stops with me tonight. These stations are more than relics of the past. They are places where time, memory, and tragedy converge. Some travelers leave shaken. Some never leave at all. And some carry the echoes of the shadows long after they have gone. If you ever travel through rural America at night, and the wind carries faint whistles or cries, stop, listen, and watch the rails carefully. The shadows might be closer than you think. Would you dare to step onto one of these forgotten platforms? Or would you turn away and never look back? Rest well, my friend. Until our next journey into the dark and haunted unknown.